if I have to speak about uh, the large canvas of governance and what we should do here. But I thought I will limit myself to a subject in governance, which we are all concerned and we are all interested in, which is in the context of the decentralization experiment that Kerala has gone through. Now, usually we are told that we have a three-tier system. But as I think of it, I think decentralization doesn't really mean only those layers which are at the lower level. Decentralization means a way of governance, and that should start from the center, state, and the three-tier. But even in that three-tier, what I find interesting is that we have separated urban from rural. We have a three-tier only for rural areas. So you have a Jilla Panchayat, which is for the rural areas of a district. Then you have a subdivision of that into blocks panchayats, again rural areas of that district, and then the village panchayats. So village, block and district rural. Then you have the municipalities, which are exclusively urban without any layers. So you have a single entity for urban areas, three different levels of entities for rural areas. Then you have the subnational state, and then you have the national state. So in a way you have 5 plus 1. You have 6 kinds of, you can say, layers there. Why I include the central state and the subnational state is that much of what happens in the three-tier system, plus the municipal system, let me say PRI, Panchayat Raj Institution, are still contingent on the decisions taken both at the central level and at the state level. For example, it is the central government which asks the National Financial Commission to look into the progress in decentralization and to devolve directly sometimes such financial resources as the Commission deems fit. And that's why you have this 14th Finance Commission, a reasonable amount, some will say very important amount, and I don't think so. A reasonable amount has been set apart for the Panchayat Raj system without allowing the state to take that resources for their own use. Then you also have very much to do with the state level system, and I think, and that's one of the questions I am raising, that the decentralization at these three-tier rural level and the municipal level are still driven essentially by the decisions taken by the state government. First of all, the State Finance Commission. Not all state finance commissions recommended are respected in most of the states. There are a few states like Kerala, to some extent Karnataka and Maharashtra. These are the 3 states which give some credence to the recommendations of the state finance commissions. So if I just limit myself to Kerala, there is a healthy convention now that the recommendations are respected. So to that extent, I think that we have moved a little forward in terms of giving a constitutional respectability to the functioning of the Panchayati Raj as far as the money is concerned. But except the own revenues that the panchayats collect, much of the expenditure decisions are also driven by the state levels decision making, either directly or indirectly. Whether in what kind of a plan you ought to make, what kind of expenditure proportions that you have to do. And in many cases, even that's why I think John said that they are looking up to the state government for GO, government order. If the GO is there, then they will do it, except those who have little more active. So in a way, I have a feeling that there is some deficiency on the part of the Panchayat Raj institutions, political functionaries, of their constitutional rights and inherently constitutional power vested in them. That takes me to the fact that the most important aspect of governance, maybe because I am an economist, is that you must have some money in your hand. Because if you don't have, and you make decisions and you make a lot of schemes, you have nothing. So if you want to implement it, you must have your own finance. In a way, our system of Panchayat Raj in Kerala is heavily dependent on the state government. But so long as the state government is respectful of the state finance commission's recommendations, they are assured of it. But then there is a large amount of money, a large proportion of money, which goes through the expenditure system of individual departments, whether it is agriculture, health, PWD, a whole range of things. But supervisory functions are given to the panchayats. So that probably it is that aspect which force them to depend on what is being told to do. But when I talk to some of the functionaries, panchayat functionaries and secretaries, they said they have a limit on even to make, even every protocol is followed, and then you make the final payment, you need to get prior permission. Maybe it used to be up to 5,000 you can sign your check, but even in a very small office you have a higher threshold for signing checks for the administrative functionary. So in a way, I don't know whether it is lack of confidence, lack of confidence in the system of decentralization that makes the state governments so much controlling despite the progress that we have made. I think Kerala's progress, Kerala's first rank in many things is contingent on lack of anything in the rest of the many. So in a way, and it is very true for panchayats. So the absence of others not doing even the minimum makes you the first runner in this game. Therefore, I thought about the system of own revenue, and fortunately, we have a panchayat raj system, the village panchayats, which are considerably larger than the village panchayats in other states because of the habitat pattern. So you have anywhere between 15,000 to 20,000 on an average, which is an interesting size as far as in decision making, viable schemes, and also own revenue. But when you examine the own revenue, I don't have the latest figures, so I won't be able to tell you. But till a few years ago, I was checking with Harilal, and he also said I have to check. My impression is they collect little less than half the amount they ought to collect. So in a way, again, there is, even when you are given the power of taxation and collection, you are not in a position to take care of it fully. And that, I think, we need to flag it as an important issue to be resolved in the context of the Kerala district. This doesn't mean the state government is doing its duty of collecting all the taxes. That's one of my perennial questions posed in public, for which I have never got an answer as an economist. Although our own earlier colleague and now finance minister, when I put some of my students on this task, and I told him that our indirect methodology says that you are not collecting 35% of the total revenue that you ought to get. So he said, well, that sounds a little higher on the side. And he himself did a piece of work along with Mohan. R. Mohan was an earlier income tax commissioner, and they found 29%. So maybe ours was a little higher. I said, fine, 29. You take just 25. And if you take 25% of the money that is due to you, and you are not able to collect for a variety of reasons, the amount of money that you are losing as of now, you take 75,000 or 75 to 77,000 crores, 25%. It's about 18,000 crores of rupees. And we are saying we have no money. Our threshold of debt, borrowing has been reached, 3.1%. We are supposed to maintain 3%. That's true. But you have a non-debt creating source which you are not using. There is litigation, there is all kinds of other things. Yes, litigation is there. You have to fight out the litigation. Maybe you won't get 25%, you will get 20%. So, if you are talking about resilient Kerala, I think this question, to my mind, has not been adequately addressed both politically and administratively. If only I said this in some other forum which matters, but then said, well, we have to, we'll see, we'll see how much can be collected. Next day, the newspaper report comes, which is about non-tax revenue, that the revenue department has to collect 500 crores of rupees as rent from the land that it has leased out to many parties. 500 crores of rupees. You take every department like this, and then the tax department. So there is a much deeper problem of governance, both at the decentralization system as well as at the state level, that we have not been able to. This is partly to do maybe that our political system is yet to mature into a proper vigorously constitutional system, because this is, you are not, see, people talk about let's have a additional 1% on the sales tax. What do you mean by that for Kerala state? But you want the sanction of the GST Council, National Council, because they have to take the decision as far as GST is concerned. So the finance minister is asking the GST Council, allow me to impose a plus 1% on the GST that is prevalent in Kerala. What I am saying is, you are punishing the taxpayer, because the people who don't pay tax were not paying the earlier tax, and they will not pay you the plus one because they are not in the habit of paying. So you are really basically imposing the burden on people who are willing to pay your tax, and that's a very regressive form of taxation, and that's what we have been told in the basic lessons of public finance. So I just want to figure that. There is another question that I want to flag off. I'm only flagging a few issues. That's on the basic question of structure. Again, I talked to many of our friends, both in KSSP, Oxford, and very many other people in the Green Kerala Express TV reality show, that how useful and effective is our block panchayats, because most of our focus of attention is on the village panchayats, and it's a very vigorous system despite many drawbacks that John made out, which is true, and you can apply that to any institution, a large collection of institutions. But still there is a focus on the village panchayat president, the council. In fact, in the entire floods, the focus of mobilization was on the panchayats or municipality, whichever the case, because they are the nearest elected members for contact, for mobilization. And the revenue department is, because of our colonial administration, they are the administrative bosses in relief. Distress relief is always, revenue secretary is the relief commissioner, but revenue department officials at that lower level, maybe a couple of them or 2 or 3 of them, they can't do all this mobilization. The entire mobilization was done by village panchayat and municipalities. And when you really look at the functioning of the block panchayat, they don't have much to do. They are coordinating. They say if you are agricultural plans of 7 village panchayats, the block coordinates, and it's like a post office, they forward it to the Jilla panchayats, where the DPC looks at it and then they pass it. So in a way, I'm not sure that just because it is a national law that we have just agreed to have this additional burden. Why not we ask for exemption? And that can also reduce much of time, costs and other kinds of expenditure. So maybe some people might feel there is a strong case for block level. If there is a strong case, I haven't heard yet. So that's one. The third one has to do with basic functions of the Panchayati Raj. If you take municipalities and villages, there are many basic functions: roads, street lights, waste management, a whole range of things. But something which has become so important is the waste management issue. And I must say that despite all the Kerala model and the Kerala way of doing many interesting things, we have not been able to tackle in a satisfactory manner. And there are different ideas are there, different technologies are there, whether it should be at the source, whether it should be locally handled or it should be corrected. My own, again talking to a lot of people who are in the field, my own feeling is that there is no unique solution. There are areas where you can handle it in a decentralized way if it comes to biodegradable waste. But what do you do with hospital waste? What do you do with electronic waste? What do you do with other kinds of toxic waste like medicine, useless medicines that are used by households, batteries, electronic batteries, lead batteries, and then metallic equipments, and now the vehicles, and a whole range of things. So you need some kind of centralized technological and logistical solutions. Some of them at the intermediate level, some of them at the local level. I think we need to flag that. I have a feeling that in prioritizing functions, most of our local governments, I won't call it self-governments, because self-government would mean this is another issue that I want to flag on. They are paying much attention to this in a serious way. Well, the whole question of are they self-governments? They are called self-governments. If it is self-government, then you must have functions which will encompass a whole range of civic and civil administration functions. That could be to do with law and order maintenance. Like in many industrialized countries, you have the county police, you have the county sheriff, you have the system of law enforcement, which we don't have. You have the revenue system, we don't have the revenue system, is still departmental. So a whole range of functions are outside, which are necessary, and which are, I think, if you follow what John again mentioned, and which I also subscribe very strongly, if the principle of subsidiarity is accepted. And I think subsidiarity goes well with democracy, because what can be done at the local level, do it at that level. What needs to be done at a higher level of the meso level, maybe subnational, district or state level, do it at that level. What can be done only at the national level, do it at the national level. So there are different, you accept the principle of different levels being able to handle different issues and responsibilities. I think that need to be if you take the disaster management role, as I said earlier, they don't have the administrative designation to handle disaster management, but I think there is now a rethink whether it should go along the old famine manual, relief manual of the colonial governments and revenue department handling it. If that is so, one of the lessons that we should take from the recent floods is the coming together in a state of emergency of the civil society organizations and the official apparatus. And official apparatus right from the state, district, as well as the panchayat level, working in tandem with the civil society organization, whether it is fishermen's organizations or agricultural farmers associations, cooperatives, students, youth, a whole range of people in which ICT technology was very effectively used. And I think at that level, as again I want to go back to what John said, you know what is happening at that local level, so documentation is easier, which is done actually. When the UN team was, we got all the data from the panchayats and the district levels where they deployed their people, officials, as well as panchayat level Kudumbashree members and a whole range of things. I also want to make a special mention of Kudumbashree, which is neither an official organization nor a fully autonomous social movement like KSSP or a Mahila Federation or a library movement or youth movement, things like that. But it's an interesting intersection of there is a part state support because the whole focus is on poverty alleviation, reducing their various kinds of deprivation. So, but they have the associational freedom and they have joined into small groups. So this blending of partly civil society induced organizational structure and partly supported by a mission, state mission. And then aligning with the Panchayat Raj, thanks to people like Vijayanand who pushed the idea, but also politically accepted and implemented by the political leadership, that giving a formal recognition to Kudumbashree at the Panchayat level. Now to do the NREG is implemented through the Kudumbashree. The ASHA workers and the NRHM cadres are selected through the Kudumbashree, and a whole range of other activities which are natural. So in a way, it is a two-pillar system that you have a civil society induced organizational structure. But my worry is that, having done a very detailed study on the Kudumbashree, what I find is that there are elements of patronage and exploitation. Patronage because they are women, so the panchayat used to mostly men, now of course half of them are women. So look at them in a very patronizing way, giving them something, but not really compensating for their labor. There are many things they are asked to do without wages, because they get NREG and other kinds of things. And they feel obliged to do it because if they don't do it, they are afraid that so we have not yet got out of a traditional patronage, feudal remnants of our feudal culture, but we are functioning in a plane of constitutionalism. And I think we need to strengthen the whole notion of constitutionalism, because what these women are indirectly doing, sometimes directly, is asserting their citizenship when they are able to do it in a group. Individually, because many women told us that I won't be able to go to a police station in a single individual if I have a problem. Why? Even to go to an office to get my 3 cent of land possession certificate, because I don't know how to do it, or panchayat. Now when they go and they say that I'm the chairperson of this panchayat's Kudumbashree, please sit down. Then they are given a chair to sit down, not only by bank managers, because they want them as their clients for borrowing money, but also many officers. They are also now helping other officers in helping the citizens who come and who want to get the service done. They fill up the forms. So they become so in a way, my own understanding, sometimes, well, not sometimes, most of the time I'm an optimist. So I think they are slowly but steadily asserting citizenship. And our ambience is in a way conducive to that, despite very many difficult challenges outside of these official transactions. Then you go back to your faith, you go back to your superstitions, you go back to, but you can't blame all of them. It's, for everything you have, if you get a critical mass, then you can project that, and then you think the whole society is like that. It's not like that. I think it's a tension, and it is a conflict. The last point on the whole issue of decentralized governance, because the way I have defined it, because then it includes all layers of, it's the interdependence that I am emphasizing. So we don't have to say this is centralized governance unless you are a dictator. This is decentralized. The Indian Constitution now provides you constitutionally the power to have 3 levels of governance: national, state, and below the district and below that level. But everywhere it might be there, but I think we have this problem in Kerala. I often wondered, why is that in some aspects of development induced by the certain mode of governance that we have achieved high ranks, why in some others that you don't have a similar system? For example, education, health, you rank 1 or 2 or whatever it may be. But you take waste management, you take irrigation, completion of infrastructure, time, cost, overrun, you are one of the backward. Well, there is political economy to it, there is this culture of rent seeking, but then that culture of rent seeking should have spread to everywhere. What I find, if you push the logic of, I think, collective action, that's the title of one of the books of not a very socialist economist, but a very liberal economist, but I think there is some point in that. When it comes to public goods, the realization of which gives you a direct benefit, you have an incentive to participate. I want my school in my village to be improved upon because my child or my grandchild or my nephew's child, my family's children also benefit. You want the hospital to function well because I also want to get that benefit. The benefit is divisible. If the road is bad and full of potholes, you crib. You don't fight for it. Somebody should do it well. He will do it because he has a car and he has to come through that, or he has a connection with the engineer. So let him do it. Free rider problem. Because I cannot get a benefit which I can realize it's mine. It's mine, it's yours, it's yours, everybody. So let's all do it. In the waste management case, not in my backyard, but they want waste management. I don't want anything to be thrown around, but I don't want it in my side. So I should be kept out of that responsibility. Somebody should do it, then we should not. So I think this problem also comes because your emphasis in the first, where you have benefits can be directly get, is very much in tune with your individual self-interest. The other is very much in tune with your collective rationality. And I don't think our politics helps in pushing that collective rationality sufficiently forward, because we are in a mode of politics where bargaining is the instrument. As student organizations bargain for their benefits, no more raise in the bus tickets. The employees of the government, yes, we want more holidays, we don't want the retirement, this thing for more benefit, more DA, more this thing. Somebody else, the farmers want their benefit, or caste association wants their share of government pie. So everyone is in a lobbying, and in lobbying you bargain, in bargaining you divide. So it is this division of the cake that you are interested, not in the larger, although very much in tune with the moral and the community message that John was talking about. Homo economicus. So I think, but I think politics and civil society has a much bigger responsibility, because by definition they say we are for public interest. If I'm a member of a trade union, I don't say we are for, although we could be for public interest. So those who are explicitly committed to public interest should push that collective rationality.